This is Michael today, the Copenhagen Voice at Politiken with Manfred Nowak, and you are the
United Nations Special Rapporteur on torture and other forms of cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment.
Ooh, a long title. How have the developments been in the past 60 years since the Human Rights Declaration was signed?
They were very positive in terms of standard setting, codification of human rights. We have a beautiful normative framework. Human rights are today the only universally accepted value system that is accepted as binding obligations of states to respect, ensure and protect human rights. On the other hand, reality is not as it should be. There's a huge implementation gap, and the big challenge of the 21st century is to bridge this implementation gap.
You mentioned in your talk earlier about poverty and indignity, or the lack of dignity.
Yes.
Are they things that you meet all the time when you visit your inspections?
I mean, there are various violations of human rights and also attacks on human dignity. Poverty, in particular extreme poverty, is an attack on human dignity. More than 1 billion people are living in extreme poverty without access to clean water, a roof over their head. They are starving, no education, healthcare, etc. But if you look into prisons, police stations, etc., and to see how detainees are treated all over the world, you often find not only that they are tortured, but also that the very way how they are living in these conditions is inhuman and degrading and an attack on their dignity as well.
When you are on your inspections, for example, you've been to prisons, you've seen people being beaten up. You must have emotions, you must have feelings when you see these, talk to these people. Can you keep those, or should you keep those feelings out of your reports?
You can't do, but still you have to be professional and you have to assess the situation as objectively as possible. You should not believe every story a detainee is telling you. You should always speak to the other side. That means the alleged torturers, the police chiefs, the prison directors, the government. But you also speak to the non-governmental organizations, and then you see all sides and you get a fuller picture. But of course, for me, it's not only to talk to detainees. I always take a forensic expert with me. And very often it is not that difficult to corroborate the evidence by a forensic and medical inspection. We often then go to the torture rooms as they were described by the detainees, and we often still find the torture instruments exactly as they were described to us, and then we can talk about evidence.
What can we as ordinary people, and what can countries or nations do to eradicate torture?
Countries, governments can do a lot. We know what needs to be done in order to prevent torture. One of the most important issues is opening up places of detention to independent scrutiny, unannounced visits by national commissions composed of doctors, lawyers, psychiatrists, social workers, to carry out unannounced visits to all places of detention, speak to detainees. If this is really taken seriously, you can stop torture very, very quickly. Every police chief, every prison director should know what is going on in his or her place of detention, and if they really want to stop it, they should bring the perpetrators to justice, to take disciplinary measures, to take preventive measures. It is possible to eradicate torture. We only need the political will to do it.
An international court for torture victims or torture survivors, you mentioned as well. What are the prospects of such a court? Very good.
It would go beyond torture. I'm calling for the creation of a world court of human rights, where victims of human rights violations, after, of course, exhausting domestic remedies, should have a possibility to address themselves in order for such an independent court to establish whether or not they were victims of torture or other human rights violations, and if so, that this court should also provide them with adequate reparation for a torture victim. That might be the costs for long-term psychological, medical, social rehabilitation measures, etc. But the big advantage of a World Court of Human Rights would also be that we could address human rights violations by non-state actors, which is a big new problem, whether we talk about transnational corporations, intergovernmental organizations, but also resistance groups, organized crime, etc., that also there you should be able to get justice before an independent World Court of Human Rights.
We know the US is not particularly favorable to the International Court of International Criminal Court, ICC. How can we be sure that such countries will be in your World Court?
We have a new US administration soon in place, and I'm very confident that Barack Obama would really change, as he has promised, US policy, but not only within the United States of America, but he has shown already that he's reaching out also to all sectors of society. I'm also sure that he would change international US policy away from unilateralism back to multilateralism. That means also supporting the United Nations. And I expect from him that the United States would also ratify the statute of the International Criminal Court, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and many other treaties which the Bush administration has not taken seriously.
Let's hope you're right. Manfred, Nowak, thank you. This is Michael Delaney for the Copenhagen Voice. Stop it again. Stop it again.